The New York sky was grey, a light drizzle falling on the bustling streets of Manhattan. Jack Ryan, once a top agent for MI6, now just wanted to live a quiet life. He sat in a small coffee shop in the Lower East Side, un espresso in hand, his eyes scanning an old newspaper. It had been 3 years since he hung up his guns, leaving behind dangerous missions to find some peace. But peace, for a man like Jack, never lasted long. The coffee shop door swung open, a bell jingling. A tall man in a leather jacket stepped inside. Nathan Ford, Jack's best friend, and the man who had dragged him into countless troubles. He wore a smirk, his eyes twinkling as if he had just found a treasure. Jack sighed, putting the newspaper down. "What are you doing here?" "Nathan, I told you I'm retired." Nathan pulled up a chair and plopped down, ignoring his friend's cold attitude. "You think I came all the way from London just for coffee? There's a job." "Jack." "A big one." He lowered his voice, his eyes darting around as if afraid of being overheard. "A group of mercenaries from Ukraine just broke into a secret lab in England. They killed all the guards, the scientists, and stole something. Dangerous." Jack raised an eyebrow, showing no interest. "How dangerous?" he asked, his voice flat. But his mind was already picturing the worst-case scenarios. Nathan leaned closer, whispering, "An AI weapon. With a single click, it can trigger a nuclear war, framing any country at once. No one knows who they plan to sell it to. But if we don't stop them, this world will be a pile of ash." Jack took a sip of coffee, his eyes sharp and cold. He had heard warnings like this dozens of times. But this time, there was something different in Nathan's voice, an urgency he couldn't hide. "Why not let MI6 handle it? I'm not an agent anymore," he replied, trying to sound indifferent. Though he was already beginning to waver, Nathan scoffed, pulling a photo from his jacket pocket. It showed a metal briefcase, a strange red light glowing from within. "MI6 wants you, Jack. They don't have time to wait for the red tape. If we delay, this thing will fall into the wrong hands. And you know who's the best at this sort of thing." He winked, a cunning smile on his face. Jack looked at the photo, his fingers tapping a rhythm on the table. He remembered the days of racing against time, dodging bullets, breaking codes, and the scars still etched on his body. He had sworn never to go back. But the world, as Nathan said, was on the brink of an abyss. "I can't do it alone," Jack said, his voice firm. "If I take this, I need a team, and not a bunch of amateurs." Nathan nodded, as if he had expected it. "I've already got a list. A top-tier hacker, an expert marksman, and a surprise. You're going to love this plan." He pushed a file across the table, on which were a few names: Emily Watson, Michael Scott, and Chris Evans. Jack frowned at the last name. Chris Evans, the Hollywood actor. "Are you kidding me?" Nathan laughed out loud. "No joke. He's our key to getting close to the target. I'll explain later. But first, we need to fly to Madrid, Spain. That's where the first lead has surfaced." Jack shook his head, feeling like he was being pulled into a massive joke. But deep down, he knew he couldn't turn his back. Not when the entire world was at stake. He stood up, leaving his half-finished coffee behind. "All right, Nathan, but if I get shot this time, you're paying the hospital bills." Nathan clapped him on the shoulder, grinning from ear to ear. "That's the Jack Ryan I know. Let's go. The mission is waiting." The two left the shop, stepping out onto the bustling New York street. The rain was still falling, but it couldn't extinguish the flame that had just been reignited in Jack's heart. He knew that once again, he was stepping onto the line between life and death. In the distance, the city lights flickered, as if heralding a coming war, and Jack Ryan, whether he wanted to or not, had become its leader. What region are you listening to this story from? And what time is it there now? Leave a comment below to let me know you're safe and focused on this story. My dear friend, we will continue right after this. The plane landed at Barajas Airport in Madrid, Spain. As a fiery sunset painted the sky, Jack Ryan stepped out, his old, worn leather jacket fluttering in the wind. He glanced at Nathan Ford, who was checking his phone with a tense expression. "Where's your lead?" Jack asked, his voice low but sharp as a knife. He didn't much care for Spain. Too much sun. Too few shadows to hide in. Nathan led him through the bustling crowd to a black van parked in a secluded corner. The lead is a guy named Donald Miller. He's the middleman for the Ukrainian mercenaries. Tonight, he's showing up at a bar near Plaza Mayor. Jack nodded. But his mind was already calculating. A middleman was never simple. If Donald was involved in this, he was definitely under heavy protection. They arrived at a small hotel in central Madrid, where Jack met the two new members of the team, Emily Watson, a young hacker with blue-dyed hair, was typing furiously on her laptop. She looked up, her eyes sharp. "I've hacked the airport cameras." Donald was carrying a briefcase with a hard drive inside. "It's definitely related to that AI weapon." Jack gave a slight nod, impressed but not showing it. The girl was fast, but he didn't like working with strangers. The second person was Michael Scott, a keyed marksman, currently cleaning a Desert Eagle handgun. "I can hit a target from 500 meters, on any terrain," Michael said, without looking up. Jack smirked. "I hope you're not all talk." He didn't trust easily. But Nathan had chosen them, and time was running out. That night, the team hid in a dark alley near Plaza Mayor. The bar ahead was lit with bright neon lights, the sound of flamenco music echoing out. Jack wore a baseball cap, observing the crowd through sunglasses. "Emily, what's the camera feed look like?" he whispered into his earpiece. Her voice replied, "Donald just went in. Table on the left corner. He's got 2 bodyguards, guns hidden under their jackets." Jack signaled to Michael, and they moved like shadows. They slipped through the crowd, pretending to be drunk tourists. Jack sat near Donald's table, ordered a glass of wine, his eyes never leaving the middleman. Donald was a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair, clutching a metal briefcase tightly. He kept looking around, clearly nervous. Suddenly, a loud noise came from the entrance. 2 men in black burst in, handguns raised. "Party crashers," Jack muttered, recognizing them as Mike Johnson's men, an old rival. Mike, a rogue agent, always showed up at the right time to mess everything up. Jack signaled Michael, and they both sprang into action. Chows erupted. Jack lunged forward, punching one of the bodyguards squarely in the face, sending him sprawling. Michael drew his gun, firing a precise shot at the other man's hand, making him drop his weapon. Donald panicked, grabbing his briefcase and running for the back door. "Emily!" "Stop him!" Jack yelled into his earpiece. From a distance, Emily hacked the streetlights, plunging the entire area into darkness. Jack chased Donald through the narrow alleys of Madrid. The sound of their shoes slapping against the cobblestones echoed in the night. Donald was panting, glancing back to see Jack closing in. Don't shoot!" he screamed. But Jack didn't need a gun. He vaulted over a dumpster and launched a spinning kick, knocking the briefcase from Donald's hand. He fell to the ground, groaning and clutching his stomach. Michael appeared, cuffing Donald. Jack picked up the briefcase and opened it. A small hard drive lay inside, its screen blinking with a red light. Encrypted data, Emily said through the earpiece. Send it to me. Il decrypte it. Jack tossed the briefcase to Michael, his cold eyes fixed on Donald. Who hired you? He growled. Donald trembled, stammering. I don't know. They captured my wife and kids. I was just following orders. Jack didn't believe him. But he knew pressing him now was useless. He turned to Michael. Take him back. We need this data before Mike returns. As the team retreated, a black car sped toward them, its headlights blinding. Mike Johnson stepped out, a sinister smile on his face. Long time no see. Jack, he said, a gun in his hand. Jack stood still, his gaze unwavering. He knew this mission had only just begun, and Mike wouldn't let him go easily. They got into their vehicle, speeding off into the Madrid night. The briefcase in Jack's hand felt like a ticking time bomb, and he knew more enemies were waiting up ahead. The night in Madrid was still alive. The cobblestone streets around Plaza Mayor glittered with lights. But danger lurked in the shadows. Jack Ryan sat behind the wheel of the black SUV, his eyes fixed on the metal briefcase on the passenger seat. Inside was the hard drive containing data on the AI weapon, the thing that could destroy the world. Nathan Ford sat in the back, checking their comms, while Donald Miller, the middleman, sat handcuffed and trembling in the corner. Jack glanced at him in the rearview mirror. Talk. Donald. Who's behind this? His voice was as cold as steel. Donald shook his head, sweat beading on his forehead. I swear. I don't know. They just sent orders through an encrypted email. They have my wife and kids. Jack didn't reply, but his gaze was sharp as a razor. He didn't believe the middleman. But time was not on their side. Emily Watson came through the earpiece. Jack, I'm analyzing the drive. It's military-grade encryption. It'll take at least 12 hours to crack. We don't have 12 hours. Jack growled, slamming on the gas. The SUV tore through the narrow streets, neon lights reflecting off the windows. Suddenly, a deafening sound blared. Headlights from two black cars appeared behind them. In hot pursuit, Mike Johnson, Jack muttered, recognizing the style of his old enemy. Mike, the rogue agent, always knew how to complicate things. Michael Scott, get your weapon ready, Jack ordered. Michael, the team's marksman, rolled down the window, the barrel of his Desert Eagle gleaming in the moonlight. Ready, he replied, his voice calm and low. Jack yanked the wheel, the SUV leaning hard as it swerved through a night market. Horns blared and people screamed as they blazed through. One of the pursuing cars pulled alongside them, its window rolling down to reveal the barrel of a machine gun. Get down, Jack yelled. Bullets ripped through the air, shattering the side mirror. Michael returned fire, putting two precise shots into the opponent's tires. The black car lost control and crashed into a fruit stand, sending fruit flying everywhere. But the second car was still on their tail, and Jack knew Mike wouldn't be taken down that easily. Emily, do something, Jack yelled into his headset. From the temporary base at the hotel, Emily typed furiously, I'm hacking the traffic lights. Hold on, suddenly. The entire area plunged into darkness as the streetlights went out. Jack seized the opportunity, swerving into a narrow alley, but the enemy didn't let up. A loud bang echoed. The SUV's tire had been shot out. Jack slammed on the brakes, the car skidding on the wet pavement. He jumped out, pulling Donald down to the car floor. Stay down, he roared, drawing the Glock from his waistband. Michael jumped out from the back, using the car door as a shield and returning fire. Bullets rained down, sparks flying from the stone walls. Jack rolled behind a dumpster, observing the enemy. 3 well-trained men in black were closing in. "Nathan." "Support," Jack shouted. From the back seat, Nathan threw a smoke grenade, creating a thick fog. Jack charged forward. His movements like lightning, he knocked one guy out with a punch, then spun and kicked the second one in the knee. The third guy raised his gun, but Jack was faster, grabbing his wrist, twisting it back, and slamming his head against the wall. In just a few seconds, all 3 were down on the ground. But Mike still hadn't shown up. Jack returned to the car and pulled Donald up. "Go," he commanded, and the team ran into another alley. They hid behind a crumbling wall, waiting. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Emily had hacked the alarm system to call for backup, distracting the enemy. Jack checked the briefcase. The hard drive was still intact. "Emily." "What's the situation?" he asked through his headset. "I've copied the data, but I need time to decrypt it. However, I've detected a signal from Donald. He's got a tracking device on him." Jack spun around, grabbing Donald by the collar. "Did you set me up?" he growled. Pulling a small chip from the middleman's collar, Donald panicked. "I don't know, they forced me to wear it." Jack threw the chip on the ground and crushed it under his heel. "Michael, take him. Nathan, get a new car. We have to leave Madrid now." The team moved quickly, but Jack could feel Mike's eyes on him from a distance. He was watching, waiting for an opportunity. As they got into another car and sped into the night, Jack clutched the briefcase tightly. He knew this hard drive wasn't just data, it was the key to the enemy's lair, which could be in Moscow or somewhere even more dangerous. And Mike Johnson, with his sinister smile, wouldn't let him win easily. The gentle sound of waves lapped against the shores of the Côte d'Azur, France, mingling with the sparkling lights from a luxurious yacht docked near the harbor. Jack Ryan stood on the hotel balcony, his eyes fixed on the magnificent vessel where arms dealer Greg Simmons was hosting a phony charity gala. He gripped his phone, his voice low as he spoke to Nathan Ford through his earpiece. "Are you sure Chris Evans will cooperate?" Jack didn't trust the idea of bringing a Hollywood star into this dangerous mission. But Nathan insisted it was the only way to get to Greg. In the room, Emily Watson sat in front of her laptop, the screen displaying the yacht's layout. Greg Simmons is a huge Chris Evans fan. He invited Chris to the charity event, but Chris has declined all previous invitations. If we can force Chris's hand, we can get right into his inner circle. Jack frowned, disliking the complication. But the hard drive from Donald Miller had been partially decrypted by Emily, revealing that Greg was the main intermediary. And the AI weapon was hidden somewhere in Moscow. They needed information directly from the kingpin himself. Nathan walked in, holding a file. "I've got something," he said, tossing the folder onto the table. It was a photo of Chris Evans secretly meeting a woman who wasn't his wife. An affair with his sister-in-law. If this gets out, Chris's career is over. He'll have to listen to us. Jack shook his head but didn't object. He hated blackmail. But they were running out of time. The team flew to Nice, France, where Chris Evans was vacationing. They found him in a luxurious villa, sipping a cocktail by the pool. Jack, posing as a new manager, approached with a fake smile. "Chris, I'm Jack. We need to talk." Chris frowned, looking Jack up and down. "Who are you?" "I don't have a meeting scheduled with anyone." He waved for his bodyguards. But Emily had already hacked the security system, locking the villa's gates tight. Jack tossed the photos onto the table. Chris glanced at them, his face turning pale. "This is a misunderstanding," he stammered. Jack cut him off, his voice cold. "Misunderstanding or not, It doesn't matter. If you want to keep this a secret, you will attend Greg Simmons' party tonight. We need you to be the bait. Chris started to argue, but Jack's razor-sharp gaze silenced him. All right, but I don't want to die, Chris sighed, knowing he had no other choice. That night, on the yacht, off the Côte d'Azur, brilliant golden lights illuminated the party deck. Chris Evans walked in, looking sharp in a black suit, drawing everyone's attention. Jack, playing the part of his manager, followed close behind, his earpiece connected to Emily and Michael Scott, who were watching from a small boat a few hundred meters away. Emily whispered, "Greg is at the VIP table. Top right. He's talking to a Russian lawyer. Looks like it's related to the Moscow Mafia." Chris approached and shook hands with Greg Simmons, the kingpin. A portly man with a fake smile was visibly delighted. "Chris, I can't believe you came. I'm a huge fan," Greg laughed, leading Chris to the bar. Jack moved silently through the crowd, his eyes scanning every movement. He noticed a waiter with a cold, sharp gaze, one of Mike Johnson's men. "Emily, we have a problem," Jack whispered. "Check the cameras." Emily hacked into the yacht's camera system and spotted 3 other men moving stealthily on the lower deck. "They're Mike's people. It looks like they're after Greg's data too." Jack signaled to Michael, who was hidden near the pier. "Get ready. There's going to be a fight." Suddenly, a waiter pulled a knife and lunged at Chris. Jack reacted instantly, vaulting over a table and knocking the man out before the blade could find its mark. The crowd panicked, screams erupting. Jack pulled Chris to the floor, dodging a spray of bullets from 2 other men. From outside, Michael took one down with a precise shot through a window. "Go," Jack yelled, pulling Chris down a corridor. Meanwhile, Emily hacked Greg's phone, downloading his contact list and encrypted messages. "Got it. Greg is in contact with an organization in Moscow. They're the weapons buyers," she announced. But before Jack could retreat, Mike Johnson appeared at the end of the hallway, his gun aimed right at him. "You again, Jack." Mike smirked. "You can never leave the game, can you?" Jack stood still, his hand tightening around the Glock behind his back. He knew Mike wasn't acting alone. Through his earpiece, Emily yelled, "Jack, there are 5 more men at the pier. Get out now." But Jack didn't move. He looked straight into Mike's eyes, calculating every second. This wasn't the end. He needed to get Chris and the data off the yacht before Greg or the Russian Mafia could react. The team rushed to the pier, jumping onto Michael's small boat. The engine roared to life, and the boat sped into the darkness, leaving the sparkling lights of the Côte d'Azur behind. But Jack knew that Mike Johnson and Greg Simmons wouldn't leave them alone. The game had just become more dangerous. The engine roared, cutting through the waves as they escaped Greg Simmons' yacht. Jack sat at the bow of the boat, his hand gripping the briefcase containing the data from Greg's phone, his sharp gaze scanning the horizon. "Emily Watson, have you found anything from the data yet?" he asked through his earpiece, his voice low but tense as a wire. From a temporary base in a small hotel in Nice, Emily typed furiously, "Greg's contact list leads to a mafia organization in Moscow. They're the buyers for the AI weapon. But there's one key name, Kasim Volkov. A Russian official is scheduled to meet Greg in 3 days." Jack nodded, his mind racing. Moscow, the enemy's den. He knew this mission would take them into the eye of the storm. Chris Evans, still shaken from the attack on the yacht, huddled in a corner of the boat. "I didn't sign up for this. Jack, I just want to make movies, not play spy games." Jack glanced at him without a trace of sympathy. "If you want to live, Chris, you'll do exactly as I say." Michael Scott, the team's marksman, checked his weapon, saying nothing. but his eyes showed he was ready for action. The boat docked at a small beach near Nice. Nathan Ford was waiting with a black van. "Get in." "Quick," Nathan commanded. The whole team jumped in, speeding into the night. Emily continued her report. "I've hacked Greg's messages. He's planning to move the briefcase with the AI to Moscow through an assistant, but Mike Johnson is also hunting for it. He knows we have the data." Jack clenched his fist. Mike Johnson, the traitor, always showed up at the worst possible moment to ruin things. He remembered their last confrontation. Mike had left a long scar on Jack's shoulder after a knife fight in Istanbul. "What does he want?" Jack asked, though he already knew the answer. Nathan replied, "Mike doesn't work for anyone. He wants the AI weapon to sell to the highest bidder." The van stopped at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Nice. Emily set up a temporary workstation, her laptop screen glowing with lines of code. "I need more time to decrypt the rest of Greg's data. But there's a problem. The Moscow Mafia's security system is too strong. I can't hack it remotely. Someone has to get inside." Jack nodded. "I'll handle it." Suddenly, an explosion erupted. The warehouse door was blown off its hinges, and thick smoke poured in. 5 men in black, armed with assault rifles, stormed in. Mike's men, Michael yelled, diving behind a crate and firing 2 shots. Taking one down, Jack rolled, dodging a hail of bullets, drew his Glock, and returned fire. One guy charged at him, a knife gleaming. Jack blocked the stab, twisted his opponent's wrist, and broke it. The man screamed and fell. Chris panicked, hiding behind a wooden crate. "I can't do this," he screamed. Jack roared, "Shut up and run." He pulled Chris, dashing for the back door, while Michael and Nathan provided cover. Emily hacked the electrical system, plunging the entire warehouse into darkness, giving the team a chance to escape. They jumped into the van, racing through the winding roads of Nice, but an armored truck followed them, its headlights blinding. "Mike doesn't give up," Jack muttered, flooring the gas pedal. The truck rammed the back of the van, making it swerve. Michael opened the rear doors and fired at the truck's tires, but the bullets just ricocheted off the steel. "It's armored," he shouted. Emily yelled through the headset, "Turn right. There's a small bridge ahead." Jack wrenched the wheel, the van skidding across the narrow bridge, but the truck stayed right on them. Jack glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the silhouette of Mike Johnson in the driver's seat, a sinister grin on his face. "Emily, do something," Jack ordered. The hacker typed, activating the traffic light system, causing a convoy of container trucks to block the armored vehicle's path. The sound of horns and screeching metal filled the air as the truck lost control and crashed into the curb. The team stopped the van in a clearing, panting for breath. Jack checked the briefcase. The data was safe. He turned to Chris, his voice ice cold. "Focus. Chris, if you screw this up, the whole world pays the price." Chris nodded, his face still pale. Nathan clapped Jack on the shoulder. "We need to get to Moscow. Kasim Volkov is the key. He knows where the weapon is hidden." Jack looked out into the darkness, feeling the lurking danger. Mike Johnson was still out there, and the Moscow Mafia was waiting. He gripped his gun tightly, knowing that the real battle had just begun. A light drizzle fell on the cold streets of Moscow, Russia, where dim neon lights reflected on the wet pavement. Jack Ryan stood in a dark alley near Red Square, his breath forming white puffs in the freezing air. He adjusted his earpiece, his deep voice coming through. "Emily Watson, what's the security status?" From a temporary base in a rundown hotel a few blocks away, Emily replied, "The Moscow Mafia's system is a fortress. Cameras, motion sensors, guards at every corner. But I've found a blind spot at the back gate. You have 10 minutes before the night shift changes." Jack nodded. checking the Glock and the canister of knockout gas hidden in his jacket. The mission was to infiltrate the mafia's building and install spyware so Emily could access data on the AI weapon's location. Nathan Ford and Michael Scott were waiting in a nearby van, ready for backup. Chris Evans, though reluctant, was tasked with creating a diversion by pretending to be a VIP at a nearby nightclub to draw the guards' attention. Jack moved silently through the alleys, his shadow blending into the darkness. The mafia building was on the outskirts of Moscow, a drab concrete structure that looked like a warehouse but was guarded like a military fortress. He climbed over a barbed wire fence, avoiding the cameras with Emily's guidance. Back door. To the left. Electronic lock. I'm disabling it now, she whispered through his earpiece. A faint click sounded, and Jack pushed the door open. Slipping inside, the corridor was pitch black, lit only by the blinking red lights of the alarm system. Jack sprayed the knockout gas into a ventilation duct, hearing the guards on the floor above collapse. He moved quickly, his steps as silent as a cat's, to the server room in the basement. The heavy steel door was no obstacle, as Emily had already hacked the lock. Inside, dozens of screens displayed encrypted data. Jack plugged in the USB containing the spyware, and a screen lit up as Emily began the remote data download. Done in 3 minutes, Emily said. But just then, a noise echoed from the hallway. Jack spun around to see 3 guards appear, rifles raised. Freeze, one of them shouted in a thick Russian accent. Jack gave a faint smile and threw the knockout gas canister to the floor. White smoke billowed out, and 2 of the men collapsed instantly. But the third was faster, lunging at him with a dagger. Jack dodged the strike, grabbed the man's wrist, and twisted, breaking his arm. The man screamed, but Jack landed a punch squarely on his jaw, knocking him out cold. Emily. Hurry up, Jack whispered, his eyes scanning the room. The alarms blared. Someone had discovered him. Michael yelled through the comms. Jack, guards are coming, get out now. But Jack didn't move. He picked up a diamond ring from a desk, pocketing it like a trophy, and continued to protect the USB. Is it done yet? He asked. 30 seconds, Emily replied, her voice tense. The sound of heavy footsteps thundered from the stairs. Jack drew his Glock, took position behind the door, and waited. 4 guards burst in, but he was ready. A volley of precise shots took down 2 men. Jack rolled out of the way, knocked out the third with a swift punch, and used the man's own knife to subdue the last one. Night-night, he said, driving the tip of the blade into the guard's shoulder, making him collapse. Done, Emily shouted. Jack pulled the USB and bolted into the hallway, but the main gate was locked, and guards were pouring in from outside. He ran up to the rooftop, the cold Moscow wind whipping his face. A helicopter hovered overhead, its searchlight sweeping the area. It's Mike Johnson's men, Nathan yelled through the comms. Jack leaped over chimneys, searching for an escape. He spotted a cable connecting to the adjacent building and, without hesitation, slid down using his leather gloves, landing safely on the opposite roof. Michael pulled the van up on the street below and threw the door open. Jack leaped down, and the van sped away just before the helicopter could fire. What about the data? Jack asked, catching his breath. Emily replied, I have the location of the AI briefcase. It's at a villa in Madrid, under Greg Simmons's control, but Kasim Volkov will be there soon. We have to move fast. Jack looked out the window. Watching the lights of Moscow recede, he knew Mike Johnson was still on his tail. And the Moscow Mafia would not forgive this intrusion. But the data Emily held was a major breakthrough. He clenched his fist, ready for the next fight in Madrid. Greg is meeting Kasim Volkov here tonight, Emily said, pointing to a secret meeting room within the villa. They plan to discuss the handover of the AI weapon. We have to get in before the deal is finalized. Jack nodded, his gaze sharp as ice. The data from Moscow confirmed Greg was the main link between the Russian mafia and two mysterious tech billionaires who wanted to use AI to manipulate the global economy. He turned to Chris Evans, who was nervously biting his nails. Chris, you need to play the celebrity one more time. Greg is a huge fan. Use that to pull him out of the meeting room. Chris sighed. I'm not a real action star. Jack, if this goes south, I'm a dead man. Jack clapped his shoulder, his voice firm. If this goes south, the whole world is dead. Focus. Nathan Ford and Michael Scott checked their gear. Nathan would pose as Chris's driver, while Michael would provide cover from a distance with a sniper rifle. Emily would hack the villa's security system, creating an opportunity for Jack to sneak in and grab the final data. Greg's system is more sophisticated than Moscow's. Emily warned. AI cameras. Thermal sensors. If we get caught, the whole team is done for. Night fell. Greg Simmons's villa was brilliantly lit. Chris, dressed in a white suit, stepped out of a Rolls-Royce, capturing everyone's attention. Greg appeared at the entrance, his face stretched into a wide, honest smile. Chris Evans. What an honor, he exclaimed, leading Chris into the main hall where VIPs were sipping champagne. Jack, disguised as a waiter, silently melted into the crowd, his eyes scanning the entire room, from the van a block away. Emily hacked into the camera system, looping the feeds to allow Jack to move undetected. Meeting room is on the second floor. Third door on the right. She whispered into his earpiece. Jack nodded, slipping through the hallway and avoiding prying eyes. He opened the door to find a desktop computer displaying a $10 billion contract for the AI weapon transaction. Jack plugged in the USB and started copying the data. But just then, a figure appeared in the doorway. It was a massive bodyguard. Pistol in hand. Who are you? He growled. Without hesitation, Jack lunged, striking the man in the throat. He collapsed, but the sound drew two other guards. Jack rolled to avoid a hail of bullets, pulled a dagger from his boot, and threw it, sinking it into one guard's shoulder. The last one charged, but Jack spun, putting him in a chokehold until he went limp. Emily. How's the data? Jack whispered, sweat dripping down his forehead. Almost there, 20 seconds, she replied. But then the alarms shrieked. Emily couldn't bypass the thermal sensors. The sound of heavy footsteps thundered up the stairs. Jack yanked the USB, pocketed it, and ran onto the balcony. He slid down a cable into the garden below, but searchlights from the guards immediately swung in his direction. In the main hall, Chris was keeping Greg busy with stories about Hollywood, but then Greg got a text, and his expression turned grim. We have an intruder, he shouted to his guards. Chris panicked, but stuck to the plan, faking a fall and knocking over a tray of champagne to create a bigger distraction. Nathan took advantage of the chaos, pulling the van up to the back gate, ready for Jack. Jack ran through the garden, dodging fire from the guards. From a nearby rooftop, Michael took out two of his pursuers with clean sniper shots. Jack, head for the east gate, Michael yelled over the comms. Jack vaulted the fence and dove into Nathan's van. The van screeched away, leaving the villa and its screaming alarms behind. In the van, Emily analyzed the data. I've got it. The contract confirms Kasim Volkov will receive the weapon in Moscow tomorrow. But there's a catch, the two tech billionaires backing Greg. They plan to use the AI to crash global currencies and inflate the price of gold. Jack clenched his fist, Then our first stop is Kasim. Suddenly, a black SUV blocked their path. Mike Johnson got out. His gun pointed straight at them. "You can't run from me forever." "Jack," he sneered. Jack stared back, his expression resolute. He knew Mike was enjoying the hunt. But Jack Ryan was no one's prey. He signaled to Michael, preparing for the next fight back in Moscow, in a dark alley in Brooklyn, New York. Jack Ryan crouched behind a dumpster, his breathing even though his heart was racing. A flickering streetlight cast shadows on his stoic face through his earpiece. Emily Watson whispered, "Jack, Greg Simmons's assistant, Sergei Ivanov, just appeared at a bar 3 blocks from you. He's carrying a newspaper. It might contain the transaction code." Jack nodded, checking the Glock concealed beneath his jacket. After the Madrid job, the team had returned to the U.S. to track Sergei, who held the last key to the AI weapon deal with Kasim Volkov in Moscow. Nathan Ford and Michael Scott waited in a truck a few yards away, ready to provide support. Chris Evans, still trembling at the thought of guns, was on lookout from afar, pretending to be a tourist taking photos. Jack moved silently through the alleys, his figure blending into the Brooklyn darkness. He knew his old nemesis, Mike Johnson, was lurking somewhere, waiting for an opportunity to snatch the data. The small bar was tucked away on a street corner, its red neon sign flickering. Jack entered, wearing a baseball cap to look like a local. Sergei Ivanov, a short Russian man with shifty eyes, sat in a corner booth, holding a folded newspaper. Jack ordered a whiskey, his gaze fixed on him. Over the comms, Emily reported, "Sergei just received a message from Greg. He's meeting Kasim in Moscow tomorrow at 9 a.m. That newspaper must hold the location of the exchange." Just as Jack prepared to approach, a familiar figure appeared in the doorway. Mike Johnson. He wore a black coat, a sinister smile on his face. "Emily, Mike is here," Jack whispered, his grip tightening on his whiskey glass. Mike walked directly to Sergei's table and murmured something. Sergei nodded and handed him the newspaper. Jack realized at once Mike was cutting in on the deal, likely to sell the AI weapon to a different buyer. Not waiting another second, Jack got up and pushed through the crowd. But Mike saw him, pulling a handgun and pointing it at him. "Don't be a hero." "Jack," he snarled. The patrons screamed and scattered. Jack dove for cover, dodging a volley of shots, and scrambled out the back door. Sergei took advantage of the chaos and fled into the alley. Jack pursued him, with Mike's footsteps pounding the pavement right behind. The narrow alley was cluttered with dumpsters and rusted pipes. Sergei awkwardly scrambled over a fence. Dropping the newspaper in the process, Jack leaped over and snatched it. But Mike closed in, a dagger gleaming in his hand. "Give it to me, Jack, or you're dead," Mike bellowed. Jack sidestepped the attack and landed a hard kick to Mike's knee, throwing him off balance. He then charged at Sergei, grabbing him by the collar and delivering a solid punch to his face. Sergei crumpled to the ground, moaning. But Mike didn't quit. He pulled his gun again and started shooting. Jack used Sergei as a human shield to block the bullets, then shoved him into a dumpster. He sprinted into a derelict building, with Mike right behind him. The doors to an old freight elevator slid open, and a dazed Sergei stumbled in. Jack ran for it, but Mike was quicker, diving into the elevator just as he slammed the button. The doors closed, leaving Jack on the other side. Without a second's delay, Jack took the stairs. Pounding up the steps, he heard Emily yelling in his ear, "Jack, Sergei's got a tracker on him. Mike knows exactly where he is." As Jack burst onto the rooftop, the elevator doors opened. Sergei ran out, panicked, and tried to toss his phone to a young man standing nearby as a misdirection. Mike emerged right after, pointing his gun at Jack. "Game over." "Jack," he said with a laugh, but Jack had anticipated it. He leaped behind a concrete pillar, dodging the bullets. Michael Scott, sniping from an opposite building, hit Mike in the shoulder, forcing him to drop his gun. Jack lunged forward, pummeling Mike's face with a barrage of punches. But Sergei had already escaped. Jack gave chase, spotting him jumping onto a motorcycle. Sergei sped away, but his terrible driving skills sent him sprawling as he took a corner. With Michael's support, Jack ran on foot and cut him off. Sergei tried to run into a construction site, but Jack was faster, grabbing him by the collar and forcing him to the ground. He opened the newspaper. A handwritten line noted a time and place: Moscow, 9 a.m. Zarya Factory. Jack stuffed the newspaper into his pocket and turned to Michael. "Call Nathan. Get the plane ready. We're going to Moscow now." As they left the construction site, Jack felt Mike Johnson's eyes on him from a distance. He had escaped, and Jack knew he would show up in Moscow, where the final battle was approaching. Jack Ryan stood on a rooftop near the Zarya factory, his eyes scanning the deserted industrial area below. Through his binoculars, he saw the figure of Kasim Volkov, a Russian official and a mafia henchman, pacing among the shipping containers. Jack clenched his fist, his deep voice echoing through his earpiece. "Emily Watson. What's the situation?" From a van a few blocks away, Emily replied, "I've hacked the factory's cameras. Kasim is waiting for Greg Simmons. The AI weapons deal is happening in 1 hour." Jack turned to Nathan Ford, who was examining a map of the area. "We don't have enough time to stop the deal. Greg will hand the AI briefcase to Kasim, and the Moscow Mafia will sell it to 2 tech billionaires." Nathan nodded, his eyes filled with worry. "But Mike Johnson is here too. He wants to steal the briefcase before the deal is done." Jack smirked. Mike, the traitor, had always been a thorn in his side. Chris Evans, though more accustomed to the missions, was still on edge. "Jack, I don't want to die here," he whispered, his hand trembling as he held his phone. Jack glanced at him, his voice cold. "Chris, just play your part. Lure Greg out. We'll handle the rest." Michael Scott, the team's sniper, checked his rifle from a high vantage point. "Ready," he said, his eye never leaving the scope. Jack's plan was audacious, bordering on insane. Convince Greg Simmons to cooperate against Mike and the Moscow Mafia. Emily had hacked Greg's bank accounts, securing proof that he had transferred $10 billion from dirty deals. "If Greg doesn't cooperate, I'll release everything. He'll lose it all," Emily said through the earpiece. Jack nodded. He didn't like allying with an enemy, but it was the only way to stop the AI weapon from falling into the hands of the 2 billionaires. Chris and Nathan drove to the factory gate, posing as Greg's entourage. Chris, in a luxurious suit, stepped inside, catching Greg's attention. "Chris Evans, you came again." Greg laughed loudly, but his eyes showed suspicion. Chris told Hollywood stories, stalling for time so Jack could sneak in through the back gate. Emily disabled the cameras, clearing a path for him. Jack moved like a ghost, avoiding the guards and approaching the meeting room where Kasim and Greg were talking. He planted a listening device and heard Kasim say, "The AI briefcase is worth $10 billion. The 2 billionaires want to use it to crash the currency, driving up the price of gold. We split it 50-50. Greg nodded, but his voice was tense. "Watch out for Mike Johnson. He's hunting for the briefcase." Jack silently withdrew, contacting Emily. "Send the evidence to Greg. He needs to know. We have him cornered." Emily immediately sent an anonymous message to Greg, with screenshots of his accounts and contracts. Greg turned pale, left the meeting room, and pulled Chris into a corner. "Who's behind this?" he snarled. Chris, following the script, replied, "I'm just the messenger. They want to cooperate, or you lose everything." Jack emerged from the shadows, his gun pointed at Greg. "Greg Simmons, we can work together. Give me the AI briefcase, or your proof goes online." Greg hesitated, but Jack's ice-cold stare made him nod. "All right, but Mike is here. He wants to steal the briefcase." Suddenly, an explosion roared. A helicopter appeared in the Moscow sky, firing down on the factory. "Mike Johnson," Michael yelled through the earpiece, sniping from a distance and taking down a soldier on the helicopter. Jack pulled Greg and Chris into a warehouse. Dodging bullets, Emily hacked the power grid, plunging the factory into darkness and creating an opportunity for the team to retreat. Inside the warehouse, Jack and Greg made a plan. "Kasim is delivering the briefcase to the billionaires tomorrow morning," Greg revealed. "But the two billionaires hired Mike to steal it first, so they don't have to pay me." Jack smirked. "Then we'll take them both down. Michael, get your weapons ready. Nathan, bring the car around." They burst outside, but a group of Mike's men blocked their path. Jack drew a knife, slashed one man's throat, and rolled to dodge another's gunfire. Michael sniped, taking down two more men. Greg, though terrified, held a gun and fired wildly to provide cover. Chris hid behind a container, screaming, "I don't want to die," Jack roared. "Shut up and run." The team escaped to the van, speeding into the Moscow night. Jack looked at Greg. "You chose the right side, but if you betray us, I'll kill you myself." Greg nodded, sweat pouring down his face. Jack knew the final battle in Moscow against Kasim and Mike would decide everything. Jack Ryan gripped the steering wheel, his eyes locked on Mike Johnson, who had just blocked their van in a dark Madrid alley. Mike's sinister smile flashed under a streetlight, his gun aimed straight at the windshield. "Jack, you'll never escape me," he growled. Jack didn't answer, his hand silently reaching for the dagger hidden under his seat. Inside the van, Chris Evans trembled, whispering, "We're so dead." Jack glanced at him, his voice as cold as ice. "Shut your mouth." "Chris, get ready to run." Emily Watson yelled through the earpiece. "Jack, I've hacked Mike's signal. He's communicating with Kasim Volkov in Moscow. The AI weapons deal is tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. At the Zarya factory, Jack nodded, thinking fast. He needed information from Greg Simmons, who was cowering in the back seat, to stop Kasim and the Moscow Mafia. But first, they had to escape Mike. Jack slammed on the gas, the fun hurtling straight at Mike, forcing him to dive aside. Michael Scott opened the back door, firing 2 shots from his Desert Eagle. But Mike rolled away, dodging the bullets like a ghost. The van shot out of the alley and onto the Madrid streets. Nathan Ford checked the map. "Keep driving." "Jack, the airport is 10 minutes away. We need to get to Moscow now." But another black SUV appeared, in hot pursuit. "Mike's men," Michael yelled, taking a sniper shot that blew out the rival vehicle's tire. The SUV flipped and crashed into the curb, but Jack knew Mike wouldn't be taken down that easily. "Emily, find a way to get through to Greg," Jack ordered. "We need his cooperation to stop Kasim." In the van, Greg Simmons trembled, sweat pouring from him. "I don't know anything else. Kasim is heading the deal, but the 2 tech billionaires are the ones behind it." Jack whipped around, pointing his gun at Greg. "Tell the truth, or I'll shoot." Emily cut in over the earpiece. "I have proof." "Jack, Greg's $10 billion contract, plus his offshore accounts. If I release it, his life is over. Jack smirked. You hear that? Greg, cooperate, or you lose everything. Greg turned pale, nodding frantically. Okay, I'll help, but Mike Johnson wants to steal the AI briefcase before it gets to Kasim. He doesn't work for anyone. He just wants the money. Jack nodded, signaling to Nathan, prep the plane. We're going to Moscow. Chris, you still have to play the movie star. Distract Kasim so I can get close. The van stopped at a private airfield on the outskirts of Madrid. The team jumped onto a jet, taking off into the night. Chris muttered, I don't want to die in Russia. Jack glanced at him without a shred of sympathy. Do your job, Chris, or the whole world pays the price. Michael checked his weapons, ready for the fight. Emily kept typing on her laptop, hacking into the Zarya factory's systems. The security there is like a fortress. I come at us. Guards everywhere. We need a perfect plan. The plane landed in Moscow at dawn. The team hid in a warehouse near the Zarya factory. Jack checked his gear, his eyes ice cold. He knew Kasim Volkov was inside the factory, preparing to receive the AI briefcase from Greg. But Mike was also lurking, ready to crash the party. Jack turned to Greg. You'll take Chris in. Pretend to go through with the deal as planned. Michael and I will break in from the back. At the factory, Chris and Greg walked in, drawing Kasim's attention. The Russian official, a tall man with cunning eyes, laughed loudly. Greg, you brought the gift right on time. Chris tried to act natural, telling Hollywood stories to stall for time. Meanwhile, Jack and Michael snuck through the back gate, with Emily disabling the cameras. They moved quickly, avoiding guards, and got close to the warehouse holding the AI briefcase, but an explosion ripped through the air. A helicopter appeared, firing down on the factory. Mike Johnson, Michael yelled, sniping from a distance and taking down a soldier on the chopper. Jack pulled Greg and Chris into the warehouse, dodging bullets. Emily hacked the power grid, plunging the factory into darkness. In the dark, Jack confronted a guard, knocking him out with a swift blow. Greg, where's the briefcase? He roared. Greg pointed to a metal container. In there, but Kasim has the code. Jack signaled to Michael, protect Chris. I'm going for the code. He dashed out, dodging fire from Mike's men, determined to stop the deal before it was too late. Jack Ryan raced through the dark corridors of the Zarya factory in Moscow, his breath heavy but his steps steady. Gunfire from Mike Johnson's helicopter still echoed outside. But Jack didn't stop. He had just convinced Greg Simmons to cooperate, and the briefcase with the AI weapon was in the warehouse ahead, guarded by Kasim Volkov. Emily Watson shouted through the earpiece, Jack, Kasim is about to hand the briefcase to the two billionaires. You have 10 minutes before they leave Moscow. Jack tightened his grip on his Glock, his eyes ice cold. The final battle had begun. Nathan Ford and Michael Scott provided cover from outside, holding back Mike's men. Chris Evans, though terrified, kept playing the movie star, distracting Kasim by pretending to negotiate with Greg. Jack slipped into the warehouse, where Kasim stood next to the metal briefcase, its screen flashing red. The two tech billionaires, Elon Carter and Mark Gates, stood beside him, their eyes greedy. The code. Kasim, Elon ordered. We paid $10 billion. Give it to us. Jack hid behind a container, listening as Kasim read a 15-digit code over the phone to Greg. Emily recorded it from a distance. I've got the code, but Jack. Mike is entering the warehouse. Jack nodded, calculating his move. He signaled for Michael to create a diversion with a sniper shot from the roof. An explosion roared, as Michael hit a fuel drum, filling the warehouse with thick smoke. Kasim panicked, grabbing the briefcase. But Jack was ready. He burst out, knocking out a guard and snatching his rifle. Elon and Mark scattered, leaving Kasim to face Jack. "Who are you?" Kasim roared, drawing his gun. But before he could fire, Mike Johnson emerged from the shadows, his gun aimed at both of them. "The briefcase is mine." "Jack," Mike said with a sinister smile. "You lose." Jack stood still, his eyes locked on Mike. A screen on the AI briefcase began a countdown. 12 seconds. Mike laughed loudly, thinking victory was his. "You're not fast enough," he taunted, his finger tightening on the trigger. But Jack was strangely calm. He watched Mike's every move, the way he tilted his shoulder, the way his eyes glanced toward Kasim. 10 seconds. Jack counted silently, waiting for his chance. 8 seconds. Kasim tried to run, but Jack threw a kick that sent him and the briefcase to the ground. Mike fired, but Jack rolled, dodging the bullet and taking cover behind a crate. 6 seconds. Emily screamed, "Jack, get the briefcase." Jack leaped up, grabbing it, but Mike lunged forward, a dagger flashing. 4 seconds. Jack spun, blocked the stab, and punched Mike square in the face. 2 seconds. Mike staggered, but still tried to snatch the briefcase. 1 second. Jack delivered a final blow, smashing the briefcase hard against Mike's head and knocking him unconscious. The countdown stopped. Jack exhaled, sweat rolling down his forehead. Kasim tried to crawl away, but Michael shot him in the leg from a distance, making him scream. Jack opened the briefcase, disabling the AI with the code from Emily. "It's done," he whispered, turning to Greg, who was hiding behind the crates. "You're free." "Greg, but don't let me see your face again." Outside, Nathan and Chris rushed in, providing cover for the team's retreat. But Elon and Mark, the two billionaires, had escaped in an armored vehicle. Emily reported, "I've locked their accounts. $10 billion has been transferred. They have nothing left." Jack nodded, but he knew Mike would be back. He always survived. Like a snake, the team boarded the helicopter, leaving Moscow in the light of dawn. Jack looked at the now disabled AI briefcase and felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He turned to Nathan, planning on luring me into another mission. Nathan laughed. "Isn't saving the world enough for one day?" Jack smirked, but didn't reply. He knew that as much as he wanted to rest, the world would always need him. As the helicopter soared through the sky, Jack looked down at Moscow, the city that was both his battlefield and his victory. Chris sighed in relief. "I'm heading back to Hollywood." Jack shook his head. "Stay clean." "Chris, don't make me save your hide again." The group laughed, but Jack could still feel the shadow of Mike Johnson lurking somewhere, waiting for an opportunity.